Ok, ora iniziamo. Sono le 9, quindi buongiorno a tutti.
I think we can start. Good morning everyone, and welcome. I'm Lavinia Rocchi Carrera, the Secretary General of the World Union of Catholic Organizations. I will be your moderator for today. Thank you for being here with us today. We're here to celebrate the International Women's Day with different women who will give us the reading of Fratelli tutti from different perspectives. So this gathering is a sign of a brotherhood and sisterhood of two women's organizations, the Women's Council of the Pontifical Council for Culture and the World Union of Catholic Women's Organizations, WUCWO, which wish to respectfully embrace all participants, regardless of physical distance, in a gesture of social friendship. So today's conference is a conference that combines two paths. On the one hand, the cycle of conferences, Women Read Pope Francis, organized by the Women's Council, and which started on October the 7th, with the first webinar on Evangelii Gaudium, and on the other hand, the process of interreligious dialogue on women builders of fraternity carried out by WUCWO, whose last step was the celebration of the International Women's Day. So we can also count on the collaboration of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue and the valuable patronage of the embassies to the Holy See of Argentina, Austria, the British Embassy, the Embassy of France, the Netherlands, Peru, and East Timor. Now let's get started right away with this very packed program. I am pleased to give the floor to His Eminence Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi, President of the Pontifical Council for Culture. Thank you, Your Eminence. You have the floor. Let me join in Lavinia's greetings. I am particularly glad because the female women's consultant has already worked on the reading of Pope Francis' texts, and I'm glad to have come to this culminating point today and with the International Women's Day. I'm also very glad to hear so many voices, which represents the diversity of human experiences as well as religious experiences. And I see Cardinal Ayuso, who incarnates the Vatican's commitment in this endeavor. The voices are different and very valuable based on the program that I've seen. And it is also very interesting for us to see the presence of the 7 ambassadors. And some of these women are also closely linked to us. The Council of Culture also relies on the presence of Professor Corradi. My wish is that for me to be able to look at this encyclical with the same female look, this is a very extensive encyclical letter, is more than 300, it's like 300 numbers, because it is, our reading is not the only one that is important. I'm thinking in terms of a male way of looking at this, but this is a triptych that we find in this encyclical, because on the one hand, there is a painting, a dark painting. The title is The Darkness of a Closed World. And then we have a second painting, a second part, which is very, that has light, generating an open world. So these two paintings are linked together in a very significant way, thanks to the figure of the Good Samaritan, who's a stranger, a foreigner on the road, who saves a person who is completely different and maybe even hostile to him. So I hope that by listening to these different voices, we too will be able to understand the many nuances that can be found in this encyclical. And I would like to conclude quoting some words from this encyclical that mirrors the whole ministry of Pope Francis, when he says, only by identifying ourselves with the least ones we will be able to become brothers and sisters of everyone else. Thank you, Your Eminence, for your beautiful words and your wishes. Now, let me give the floor to His Eminence Cardinal Ayuso, Pontifical President of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. Good morning. Good morning. It is a joy for me to greet you on this very special day at this webinar organized by the World Union of the Catholic Women's Organizations and the Ecumenical, the Women's Council of the Pontifical Council for Culture. And I'm here to represent my the council, the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue that I represent. And let me greet all the ambassadors that we have here. Thank you for your availability and your willingness to participate in these webinars and all other webinars. Thank you for all your contributions to this reflection. This is not the first time that a gathering like this has been organized to celebrate the International Women's Day. Those who read Fratelli Tutti today, well, I think that that women's viewpoint and the testimonies of those of you who belong to different religious traditions will give us much food for thought to read Fratelli Tutti. Pope Francis says clearly in his encyclical that the issues having to do with fraternity and social friendship have always been among his concerns. And the message of fraternity and social friendship can be welcomed and understood and shared even by men and women, believers in other faiths, as well as the many women and men who are non-believers. Christianity and the other religious traditions and human cultures are involved on this journey the journey of brotherhood and sisterhood. But we are aware that there are so many hindrances and obstacles to overcome. And so I wonder, how can we take a step forward? I'd like to suggest, to give you some food for thought, that is the need to seek shared and common words, especially in the context of interreligious dialogue. We have a common language, a shared reading of reality, and this is what helps us to take that step forward, which is vital to shift from a world of partners to a world of brothers and sisters, as Pope Francis says. Therefore, I'm convinced that women, since they have peculiar characteristics and traits, can contribute in an extremely significant way to interreligious dialogue, thanks to their ability to open up and to listen the other and respect their neighbor. I would like to conclude with the words addressed by Pope Francis on June the 9th, 2017, to the participants in the plenary assembly of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. On that event, Pope Francis said, "It is clear how important education for universal brotherhood is, which also means learning to build bonds of friendship and respect. And this is important in the field of interreligious dialogue. Today, more than ever, it is necessary for women to be present. Dialogue is a journey that women and men must make together. Ultimately, everyone, men and women, are called to contribute to education for universal brotherhood, which is ultimately education for peace in the complementarity of different sensibilities and roles." Dear sisters and dear brothers, friends, I believe that these words of the Holy Father can inspire our reflection today and accompany us on our interreligious journey. Thank you for your valuable work. Thank you, Your Eminence, for your words and the food for thought you're giving us. Now, let me give the floor to Professor Corradi, President of the Women's Council of the Pontifical Council for Culture. Ms. Corradi, you have the floor. Thank you, and good morning to all of you. I'm Consuelo Corradi, and I'm taking the floor to extend the greetings of the Women's Council of the Pontifical Council for Culture, which is one of the two organizations together with the WUCWO that organizes this webinar. This is a particularly important moment to all of us. It has been said that the Women's Council from last October has started a journey to read Fratelli Tutti. And the title of this path, of this journey, is Women Read Fratelli Tutti, or Women Read Pope Francis. 20 women very active in many fields of our society. And this morning, I should like to recall the one that is most closely linked to this webinar we are taking part in, that is interreligious dialogue. In the Women's Council, there are women from different religions. And on that, we created a number of initiatives because we believe that interreligious dialogue in such a fragmented world in which we live in, always ready to conflict, well, dialogue among religions is a very important moment to create bonds. In the first webinars, Pope Francis gave us a big gift. He sent us a letter. And I should like to quote a brief sentence of Pope Francis to Women's Council. He said, the Women's Council is a beautiful, is something new that is beautiful as it is unique among the dicasteries of the Holy See. The Council, in its founding document and the deep conviction of Cardinal Ravasi, well, the Council has the mission to provide an active and critical contribution in terms of reflection and thought to the Pontifical Council for Culture. I would like to thank two people in particular who have worked so much in previous weeks, that is Maria Lea Zervino, president of WUCWO, and Shahrazad Usman, who this morning will contribute with the Islamic contribution point of view, and they are also members of the Women's Council. Thank you, and I wish you a fruitful webinar. Thank you, Professor Corradi. Now, I would like to briefly introduce WUCWO, especially for those of you who do not yet know it. So I'll do it with a short video made by some women representatives of WUCWO.
In the World Union of Catholic Women's Organizations,
we unite almost 10 million women
from all continents
and 100 organizations.
We promote the participation
and co-responsibility of Catholic women
in the church and in society.
Evangelizamos y trabajamos por el desarrollo humano integral.
We are an international public association of the faithful.
Nous avons des représentantes à
ECOSOC in New York,
Conseil des droits de l'homme à Genève,
UNESCO à Paris,
la FAO à Rome
et le Conseil de l'Europe à Strasbourg.
Juntas podemos
promover la dignidad y el desarrollo de las mujeres, las niñas y la familia.
Surtout les plus vulnérables.
Trouver de meilleures solutions
aux problèmes des femmes.
Llevar su voz a donde no se pueden expresar.
Compartir buenas prácticas.
Llevar nuestro país al mundo.
Traer el mundo a nuestro país.
Network with other organizations.
Be open to young people.
Servir l'Église et les femmes du monde.
Deepen our faith formation and spirituality.
Be stronger to the path to holiness.
Ofrecer al mundo un rostro femenino de la Iglesia.
Thank you, Stefano. As you can see, despite our different cultures and languages, we have a mission that unites us and enables us to serve women all over the world. So I can only add that WUCWO is now very much engaged, not only in the path of ecumenism, but also in the interreligious dialogue to find together strengths for women. That is why we are celebrating International Women's Day with this event. Now, before I give the floor to our keynote speakers today, we would like to share with you a video message by Irina Bokova.
Al 2017. Prego Stefano di far partire
member of the High Committee for Human Brotherhood, former Director General of UNESCO from 2009 to 2017. Please, Stefano.
Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me enormous pleasure to participate in this important event
dedicated to the 8th of March, the International Women's Day, organized by the World Union of Catholic Women's Organizations, jointly with the Women's Consultation Group of the Pontifical Council for Culture on the topic Women Reading Fratelli, Tutti. I'm honored to be here together with Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi and Cardinal Miguel Ángel Ayuso-Quesot, with whom we are both members of the High Committee on Human Fraternity. This brings me 2 years ago in Abu Dhabi, when two wise religious leaders, His Holiness Pope Francis and His Eminence Dr. Ahmed Al-Tayeb, Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, walked hand in hand and signed a historic document on human fraternity for world peace and living together. There were many important initiatives that followed. With the support of United Arab Emirates, the High Committee on Human Fraternity was established, entrusted by the two leaders to promote the values of tolerance, mutual respect and understanding, interreligious and intercultural dialogue. And it is indeed remarkable that the United Nations General Assembly took a decision to declare the 4th of February, the day of the signature of this historic document, as an International Day of Human Fraternity. I personally remember vividly Pope Francis' powerful speech at the United Nations General Assembly already in 2015, when the organization celebrated its 70th anniversary, and he made a strong appeal for universal human fraternity. He spoke about the need to fight economic and social exclusion as a complete denial of human fraternity and a grave offense against human rights and the environment. I believe these ideas are even more relevant today in a fragile world where the global pandemic has showed vulnerabilities all societies face. The devastating result is shrinking economies and job opportunities, rising inequalities and surging poverty, with a dangerous impact on efforts to fight climate change and ensure a sustainable path for development. Decades of efforts to reach and implement important international agreements are under threat of being lost. The Agenda for Sustainable Development 2030 and the Paris Climate Agreement. It is against this background that Fratelli Tutti finds all its relevance and critical importance today. The global pandemic has put to test our shared common values. If the word of the day is to build back, but build back better, then issues of global solidarity, empathy, compassion, and caring should underpin all efforts of governments, institutions, and I would say everyday life. Fratelli Tutti, as well as the document on human fraternity, are powerful antidotes to divisions across religious, ethnic, and cultural lines, against growing xenophobia, hatred, stigma, and discrimination against vulnerable communities. It is a call to our common humanity and common values. It is befitting in this International Women's Day to recall the 20th anniversary since the United Nations Security Council adopted the landmark resolution 1325, which for the first time enshrined the essential role of women in securing and maintaining peace. Peace, as we know, is a prerequisite for health, equality, and human security. Still today, 2 billion people live in countries affected by conflict. In these countries, women are working against tremendous odds to build and sustain peace. The evidence is clear. When women are at the negotiating table, peace agreements are more likely to last 15 years or longer. In conflict areas across the world, women's movements have worked with the United Nations to rebuild the structures of peace and security, to rehabilitate and reconcile societies, to protect refugees and the internally displaced, to educate and raise awareness of human rights. There are many questions that need their answers today. Will we accept to be divided along the barriers of our nations, cultures, economic status, gender, or faith? Or will humanity rise up as one single family, sharing the same planet, showing solidarity and empathy with the vulnerable, and making the most of its diversity to foster human dignity? Many of these answers are given by His Holiness Pope Francis and the Grand Imam that inspire us for our work at the High Committee on Human Fraternity. The two encyclical Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti together provide powerful calls for awareness and leadership in sustainable development and in the global appreciation of diversity of cultures, respect for human dignity, and ethics of development. I share Pope Francis' idea that we need to practice the grammar of dialogue, a wonderful way of putting it, which is a foundation for exchange, for mutual understanding and respect. And I believe this is exactly what you are doing today through the dialogue journey you have embarked on last year with women leaders of different religious traditions about human fraternity that continues today with your conference. Nobody is born with these skills to master the grammar of dialogue. We must learn them. We must provide young women and men with renewed sense of belonging to society and the global community, with a new vision for the future. Just recently, I participated in the Vatican Youth Symposium and listened again with respect to His Holiness Pope Francis' welcoming address. He urged the audience to be the poets of a new human beauty, a new beauty of fraternity and friendship, and of protection of the earth we inhabit. To enact change, he said, we must start with a new wave of educational opportunity based on social justice and reciprocal love. During the celebration for the first day, International Day of Human Fraternity, Pope Francis went further in saying, fraternity is the new frontier for humanity. It is the challenge of our times. There is no time for indifference. Either we are brothers and sisters, or we will destroy each other. These words were echoed by the Grand Imam, who reminded us that the document on human fraternity calls for cooperation, the rejection of intolerance and hatred, an end to wars, and the promotion of tolerance and harmony as the path to fraternity and peace. I know you are not indifferent, and I commend you for embracing this grammar of dialogue so that humanity finds the true path to fraternity and peace. Thank you for your attention and happy International Women's Day.
Allora, anche se stamattina non si è potuta collegare, ringraziamo davvero la dottoressa Irina Bokova per il suo video
Thank you, Irina Bokova, for your message. We now come to the keynotes of our speakers, women leaders from different religious communities who will offer us their reflections on the encyclical. Let's begin with the Islamic perspective with a speech by Professor Shahrazad Hosman, Iranian theologian, Vice President of the Women's Council of the Pontifical Council for Culture. Professor Shahrazad, you have the floor. Good morning to all of you. And thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you who are here today. Today is March the 3rd, and we are celebrating Women's Day. It should be March the 8th, but we, women, we are capable of anything, so we celebrate today. We're celebrating women by reading. We do that by reading. Woman in Herself is a wonderful book to be read, understood, meditated upon, and codified. Woman is the book of life, of welcoming peace and love. From a woman comes life. A woman nurtures life, sustains life. Woman is the last creature of the architect and artist of creation, the last one of his chief masterworks. The monotheistic religions have three figures: Muhammad, Jesus, and Moses. The prophet Moses becomes the prophet he is thanks mostly to two women. His own mother, who believed in God's saving power by throwing the child into the river. But she believed in God's project. And then another woman, the woman who saves this child from the same palace as his enemy, who welcomes the child from the river. In Christianity, a woman becomes the mother of God. Another woman announces the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Incarnation and resurrection could not be manifested without women. In Islam, it is a woman who is the first one to believe in the message of Prophet Muhammad. A woman believed in him and supported him with all her spiritual and material strength, the great Khadija. And then the God of the Quran then appears more maternal than paternal in the Quranic text, with the choice of the two exceptional names, Rahman and Rahim, from the same root of the maternal womb. Today we celebrate women. A woman is capable of creating, welcoming, and loving, of loving all her children, the beautiful ones and the less beautiful ones, the healthy ones and the less healthy ones, the good ones and the angry ones, and sometimes the errant or sinful ones. A woman loves them all, and mainly the most fragile and needy ones. Today, we celebrate Women's Day by reading. Reading what? An encyclical that has an exceptional title, Fratelli, tutti. As women today, we want to dream, we want to sing, we want to desire, together with Pope Francis, who invites us to dream together, to dream of a world of brothers and sisters united in solidarity, friends, collaborators for the common good of one human family. Women can welcome, can spread their arms to their sons and daughters and other people's sons and daughters. The encyclical Fratelli Tutti is the Magna Carta of our civilization and of our time, a poetic encyclical, but at the same time a cry, an earthquake that wants to awaken our consciences, a cry against political, economic, and social injustice. It is an invitation to open eyes that have fallen asleep in indifference, and a cry against individualism in its various forms that have set entire lands, peoples, and nations ablaze with blind selfishness. Fratelli Tutti builds solid bridges between faiths, inviting all believers to be credible, authentic, and sincere, because true faith can only be realized in love towards others. With the first encyclical, Pope Francis showed unity with Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, since Lumen Fidei was initiated by him and then completed by Pope Francis. With the second encyclical, Laudato Si, unity becomes ecumenical, since he clearly wrote that he was inspired by Bartholomew I. And the third encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, shows that unity is the result of the work of Pope Francis. And the third encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, the Pope is not afraid to say that he was particularly motivated by one of his Muslim brothers, the great Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad al-Tayyib. Now, let me reread a few passages of this exceptional Magna Carta to invite all men and women to read this text again. I quote number 36. We are in the midst of a pandemic, but Pope Francis tells us that worse than the pandemic is selfishness. Number 66, life is not time that passes, but a time of encounter. Number 79, we're all responsible for the wounded, that is the people themselves and all the peoples of the earth. We are all responsible and accountable, with no exception. Number 80, the neighbor without frontiers. Whoever is next to me, no condition, like diversity of language, culture, religion, color, or other, can justify my lack of attention. Number 85, recognize Christ in every abandoned or excluded brother. Number 100, the future is not monochromatic, but if we have the courage, it is possible to look at it in the variety and diversity of the contributions that each person can make. How much our family, our human family, needs to learn to live together in harmony and peace without us all having to be the same, to be equal. And I quote this in Arabic. 198. To go forth, expressing oneself, listen, look at each other, getting to know each other, trying to understand each other, looking for points of contact. Well, all this can be synthesized in the verb to dialogue. Number 202, the lack of dialogue means that no one in the individual sectors is concerned with the common good, but rather with obtaining the advantages that power brings, or at best, with imposing one's own way of thinking. The heroes of the future will be those who know how to break this unhealthy logic and decide to respectfully uphold a world full of truth over and above personal interests. God willing, that these heroes should be silently coming to light in the heart of our society. Number 218, the taste for recognizing the other. This implies the habitual ability to recognize the other's right to be themselves and to be different. This is very beautiful. 254, I ask God to prepare our hearts for the encounter with our brothers and sisters beyond the differences of ideas, language, culture, religion, to anoint our whole being with the oil of His mercy that heals the wounds of errors, misunderstandings, controversies, the grace to send us with humility and meekness along the challenging but fruitful paths of the search for peace. We know that on March the 5th, the Pope is going to a land affected by violence and suffering. For the first time in history, the Pope is going to Iraq. He's going to meet the representative of the Islamic faith there with courage. If with the greatest Imam of the Islamic world, Ahmad Al-Tayeb, they have produced a unique document of its kind, in the meeting with the Ayatollah Al-Sistani, they will create a special and luminous spiritual understanding. Together with Imam Ahmad, they wrote this: faith leads the believer to see in the other a brother to be supported and loved, especially the most needy and poor. I conclude with a poem by the 13th century Persian poet Sa'di, who narrates and dreams together with us women and the Pope of a united humanity in solidarity. Human beings are part of a single body. They come from the same pearl. When one of the parts suffers some evil, the others also feel pain. You cannot consider yourself as part of humanity if you don't have compassion for that pain. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Shahrazad, for your beautiful contribution. Let's now move to the Buddhist perspective. We have with us today Reverend Elena Seishin Viviani, Vice President of the Italian Buddhist Union.
Dottoressa, a lei la parola.
You have the floor.
Ok, scusate. Buongiorno, ringrazio le organizzatrici per questo invito. Saluto tutti quelli che sono intervenuti prima di me, le autorità religiose e i presidenti della consulta femminile dell'UMOFC. E ringrazio anche già in anticipo chi seguirà diciamo, con i propri interventi dopo di me. L'enciclica di Papa Francesco, siamo qui chiamate a leggere l'enciclica di Papa Francesco e ci ha la messa in atto di un metodo di pratica di trasformazione interiore e collettiva, e in quanto metodo è già un percorso tracciato. Questo percorso parte, ha già dei presupposti nel documento sulla fratellanza umana per la pace mondiale e la convivenza comune sottoscritto
is a natural continuation of the document on human fraternity for world peace and common coexistence, signed with the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar Ahmad Al-Tayeb.
Fratelli tutti,
and is once again inspired
con
by
cui
St.
il
Francis
santo si
by his
rivolgeva a fratelli e
Fratelli
sorelle
tutti
per
encyclica, with which he
proporre
addressed
una
brothers
vita
and sisters
ispirata al Vangelo,
to
quindi ancora un
propose a
metodo,
life
un
inspired by the
percorso.
gospel, a method,
La comunità
a
umana
pathway.
è il luogo di
The
quell'essere
human
fratelli, del
community
suo
is the place of
manifestarsi,
that being brothers
non
and
diversamente
sisters,
da
of
come
its
Buddha Shakyamuni accoglieva
manifestation.
i fratelli e le
Not unlike
sorelle
how the
nella
Buddha
comunità, nel
welcomed his
Sangha,
brothers and sisters in the
dicendo
Shanga,
ehi
his
Passika,
community,
vieni a
with a
vedere.
simple, hey
L'invito del
Passika,
Santo
come and
Padre è
see.
tutto volto
The
ad
Pontiff's
un'immediata presa di
invitation
coscienza.
is so aimed at an
Tutti sono
immediate
chiamati
awareness.
a
Everyone
riconoscere,
is
apprezzare ed
called to
amare ogni
recognize,
persona,
appreciate,
al di
and
là della
love every
vicinanza
person
fisica, al
beyond
di
their
là del
physical
luogo, del
proximity,
mondo dove è
beyond the
nata o
place in
dove
the world
abita.
where they were born or
Questi
where
tre
they live.
verbi, riconoscere,
These
apprezzare ed
three
amare,
verbs,
sono già
recognize,
i
appreciate, and
passi,
love,
l'indicazione del
are
percorso.
already an indication of
Ci
the
suggerisce
pathway
in un
forward.
certo
The
senso, ma
encyclical
sfida ogni
suggests
donna ed
and in
ogni
a
uomo ad
certain sense
aprirsi
challenges
ad una nuova
every
prospettiva
woman
di
and man to
incontro.
open up
Nelle
to
parole
a
del
new
Santo
perspective
Padre
of
ritorna la
encounter.
centralità
In the words of the Holy
dell'educazione,
Father,
in
the
questo caso
centrality of
l'educazione alla
education
fratellanza,
to
quindi non
brotherhood, to
un dato
fraternity
acquisito,
returns.
ma da acquisire, da cui occorre
And
muoversi
from here,
verso un nuovo
we must move
patto, una
towards a
nuova
new
alleanza tra gli esseri
alliance, a
viventi.
new pact
Questo è il passo che
between
può e
living
deve
beings.
guidarci in
This
un
is the
percorso di
step that can and
costruzione di
must
una
guide us
comunità
along the
umana
path
e
of
di
building a
fede.
human community and
Ci
a community
apre
of faith.
all'attivazione di un
It
metodo di
opens
pratica e di trasformazione interiore
to the
collettiva
implementation of
che ci
a
permette di
method of
riscoprire
practice
la
of inner and
relazione come
collective
fondamento della
transformation that allows
vita
us to
e come
rediscover
porta per
relationships
riaccedere
as
alla
the
sacralità
foundation
della
of life
vita,
and as a
che
door
quindi
to
è
rekindle the
comprensione
sacredness of life,
profonda
which is an
dell'interdipendenza,
understanding of
dell'interconnessione,
the
di tutto quanto
profound
ci lega
interdependence
e
that
restituisce a
binds
noi
us and
e a tutto
restores
il
the
mondo il
deepest
significato più
meaning
profondo
to
di questo
living
vivere.
itself.
L'enciclica pone
The
domande e
encyclical
chiede delle
poses
risposte
questions
e
and
ci invita a
asks for
maturare un
answers,
linguaggio adatto a comunicare con
inviting us to
tutti.
develop a
Una
language
comunità,
suitable for
e così ci si
communicating with
auspica,
everyone. A
diventi
community,
sempre più
and
quella
this is what
umana,
we hope
è tale
the
perché ognuno può
human
portare
community
e
will
deve
become,
portare il
is
proprio
such
contributo
because
libero
everyone
e
can bring
volontario,
their own
avendo
free and
sempre
voluntary
presente che
contribution,
l'obiettivo è
always
permettere ad ogni
bearing
fratello
in
e
mind
sorella
that the
di
objective
raggiungere la
is to
felicità.
enable every brother and
Ciò
sister
che
to
va
achieve
custodito e
happiness.
trasmesso quindi è la
What must
superiorità
be
dell'umanità
preserved and
rispetto a beni
transmitted is the
materiali o alle
superiority of
ideologie.
humanity
E ciò
over
implica
material goods
quell'attitudine
and
a mettersi a
ideologies.
servizio della
And this
felicità
implies
comune
the
che
attitude
per
of placing oneself
contaminazione
at the service
allarga
of
la sua sfera
common
di influenza a
happiness,
cristiani e non
which by
cristiani,
contamination
buddisti
extends
non
its
buddisti,
sphere
musulmani
of
non
influence to
musulmani,
Christians and
credenti e
non-Christians,
non
believers
credenti.
and non-believers,
Nessuno,
Muslims
ce lo
and
ricordava già in
non-Muslims.
un'altra
No
importante
one,
manifestazione Papa Francesco,
and
può avere la pretesa
Pope
di
Francis
essere solo,
reminds
di
us
salvarsi da
this all the
solo.
time. No one can
La
have
relazione
the
quindi come
pretense of
fondamento
being
di vita
alone, of
è anche
saving themselves
premessa di un
alone.
futuro condiviso. Come lo
Relationship
stesso
is the
Papa
foundation of
Francesco
life
disse in
and
un'altra
also the
occasione,
premise of a shared future.
nessuno può
A
affrontare la
profound
vita in modo
understanding
isolato. C'è
of
bisogno
how
di
much we depend on one
comunità che ci
another, how
sostenga, che ci
interconnected
aiuti
we are,
e in cui ci
implies
aiutiamo
a
a
new
vicenda a
awareness,
guardare
a
avanti.
feeling of universal
Com'è importante
responsibility that
sognare
can only be
insieme.
based on a sense
Da
of
soli
universal
si rischia di avere
brotherhood.
dei miraggi per cui
This
vedi
awareness must be
quello che non
sealed by
c'è.
a
I
new pact, a
sogni
new
si costruiscono
alliance
insieme.
among people.
Comprendere
We build our
profondamente quanto
dreams
dipendiamo quindi
together.
gli uni dagli altri, quanto
We are
siamo
so
interconnessi gli uni
interdependent
dagli altri,
from one another.
implica una nuova presa di
And
coscienza,
so we
un
need
sentimento
to
di
become
responsabilità
more and more
universale
aware, to take up a
a cui tutta
universal
l'enciclica ci
responsibility.
richiama. Ogni
And the
pagina dell'enciclica ci
encyclical
richiama a una presa di
reminds
coscienza
this
che
to
non può
us
che
in
fondarsi proprio su una
each
fratellanza
of its
universale.
pages.
Ma questa presa di coscienza
But
va
this
sigillata da
awareness,
un nuovo
as I
patto,
was
da una
saying,
nuova
must be
alleanza tra gli
sealed by a
uomini.
new
Ci
alliance
si sente
between men.
fratelli non solo
We
perché si
feel like
condivide lo
brothers,
stesso destino su
not
questa
only
terra,
because we share
ma
the
anche perché
same destiny
questo
on
è
this
occasione
earth,
per
but also
superare
because this is an
l'angolo
opportunity
visuale
to
in cui la
overcome
società
the
attuale è
angle of
rimasta
vision in which today's
imprigionata,
society has
ovvero una
been
prospettiva
imprisoned,
individualista
that is
e
an
autoreferenziale.
individualistic and
Confrontarsi
self-referential
con ciò che è
perspective,
alto da sé,
confronting
accettarlo e
what
includerlo.
is other
Quel
than oneself,
riconoscere,
accepting it and
apprezzare ed
including
amare,
it in
quelle
one's
tre
life
verbi
is a
molto potenti che ha usato il
manifestation
Santo Padre.
Is a manifestation of the same genus humanum to which we all belong.
Scusate. Allora, questa presa di coscienza va sigillata con un nuovo patto, dicevo, non solo perché si condivide lo stesso destino, ma anche perché questa occasione per superare un angolo visuale individualismo Quindi
an
ridefinirsi come
individualistic
comunità
and
umana non
self-referential
passa
perspective.
attraverso una vaga o astratta idea di comunità.
So
Papa Francesco ci
redefining
chiama una
ourselves as a
comunità
human
vera,
community does not
autentica.
pass through a
Non possiamo
vague or
nemmeno
abstract idea of
riconoscerci se non in
community.
rapporto ad
In fact, we cannot
un'appartenenza.
even
E
recognize
questa
ourselves
relazione,
except in
questa
relation
appartenenza,
to
questa
a sense
fratellanza
of
è il
belonging.
fondamento della vita.
Relationships
Tra
are
scambi,
the foundation of
confronti,
life.
frizioni e
Exchanges,
collaborazioni.
confrontations,
Dobbiamo
frictions, and
poter favorire tra
collaborations.
gli uomini e
We
le
must be
donne una
able to
sorta di circolo
foster a
virtuoso
sort
che
of
nasce non da un
virtuous
confronto
circle
a partire
among
dalle
men
proprie
and
disgrazie e
women, which is
difficoltà,
born
ma a
not
partire
from a
dalla grazia
comparison
ricevuta
based
che
on
è
one's
questa
own
vita, senza
misfortunes or
perdere la
difficulties,
visione
but
d'insieme.
rather from the grace dictated only by the principle of self-presentation,
Quindi dicevo,
preservation,
ci si mette
and
docilmente,
self-protection. We
si è
place
capaci di
ourselves
superare le
meekly in the
diffidenze
hands of
dettate
our
dal solo
brothers and sisters
principio
when
di
we are able to
autoconservazione,
overcome
di
mistrust
autoprotezione,
dictated by
educare
the
all'apertura del
principle of
cuore, come chiede
self-preservation and
l'enciclica.
self-protection.
Significa che si procede dalla disponibilità ad un'intesa con chi magari fino a ieri era un rivale o un nemico. Allora sì che potremmo dire fratelli tutti. Quindi la riumanizzazione
Ideological
della
assumptions
società
that no longer
a cui
correspond to anything,
l'enciclica del Santo
from the
Padre ci chiama,
narrowness of a thought
trova la
and
sua
action linked to
realizzazione,
individual
la sua
benefit and
attualizzazione
satisfaction.
Nel risveglio delle qualità migliori di ciascun uomo
We need to
e
rekindle
vede
the
nel
best
rispetto della
qualities
dignità di ogni altro
that
essere
we have
umano
and
e aggiungerei in
respect
un'ottica buddista di
any
qualsiasi
other
essere vivente il
human
punto
being
di
and
partenza di
living
un
being,
percorso di
to
trasformazione.
assume a
Questo
Buddhist
implica
perspective, and this
l'uscire dal
implies
presupposto ideologico che non corrisponde più a
overcoming
nulla,
any
dall'angustia di un pensiero e di
ideological
un'azione
assumptions
che
that no
sono
longer
limitati al solo
correspond to
tornaconto
anything,
e alla soddisfazione
from the
individuale.
narrowness of a thought and action linked
Abbiamo
to
quindi la grande
individual benefit and
responsabilità
satisfaction.
personale
So
di
we
restare
have the
vigili
great
in un
personal
momento di grandi cambiamenti
responsibility
come
to
quello
be
attuale
vigilant
perché oggi più
in
che mai
such
la nostra
a
stessa
moment, because
sopravvivenza
today,
dipende
more
dalla
than
nostra
ever,
capacità di
our
rimanere
survival depends on our
svegli,
ability
di adattarci a
to
nuove
be
idee, di
awake,
rimanere
to
vigili e
adapt,
affrontare la sfida al cambiamento.
to face the challenge of change.
Rigenerare una convivenza pacifica è il
Regenerating
frutto di un
peaceful
processo che impegna le
coexistence is
nostre
the
forze
fruit of a
migliori,
process
ma
that
che parte
demands
da una
our best
sincera
efforts,
conversione,
but which
dalla
starts
presa
from a
di
sincere
coscienza che solo in
conversion,
un'ottica di
from
bene
the
comune
realization that
noi
it is
possiamo
only
superare
from a
conflitti tra
perspective of the
ideologie
common good that
politiche
we
o
can
religiose,
overcome conflicts between
differenti,
ideologies,
oppure le
whether
controversie che
political
sorgono
or
per dei
religious,
motivi
or
molto spesso
disputes
futili e
that
che ci fanno
arise for
perdere di
trivial
vista
reasons and
quell'umanità
cause
di
us to
base
lose sight
che
of
ci
the
unisce
basic
come un'unica
humanity
famiglia e
that
che
unites
sempre
us
Papa
as
Francesco
one
in tutte le sue
family.
encicliche ha
And Pope
indicato come
Francis, in
unico
all
luogo.
of his
È
encyclical,
moralmente sbagliato e
showed as a
pragmaticamente
one
cieco
place.
agire
The
solo per il
sacredness
proprio
of life
limitato
unites us
interesse.
all and
La via
is
più
the seal
saggia
of
è
a new
tenere in
alliance
considerazione il
between
prossimo anche
believers
quando
and
cerchiamo la
non-believers,
nostra personale
religious
felicità.
and
È
secular.
l'atteggiamento che può condurre gli
It
uomini e le
is
donne
the
ad un interesse
attitude
personale
that
saggio.
can lead
È
men and
una
women
espressione questa di
to
Sua Santità
a
Dalai Lama. Un
wise
interesse personale saggio che implica però
personal
reciprocità
interest
e
that
quindi una
implies
sorta di interesse
reciprocity,
che
that is a
nasce da una
sort of
compassione
interest
e da
that
un'empatia.
stems from
Le uniche
compassion
risposte
and empathy.
dignitose
The
sono
only
dunque quelle che toccano
right
l'indivisibile,
answers
destino dell'umanità.
are
La
those
pace è senza dubbio una necessità morale, un imperativo
aiming at
assoluto da cui
peace, an
dipende
absolute
la stessa
imperative
sopravvivenza
from which the same
dell'umanità,
survival
ma
of
spesso tutti,
humankind
religiosi
depend,
inclusi,
but
non hanno
most
proposte da fare
often
che non siano ormai quelle decadute a livello di luogo comune. La
we
sacralità
tend
della
to
vita
reason by
comuna tutti noi
commonplaces.
ed è
The
sigillo di
sacredness
una
of
nuova
life
alleanza
unites
tra
us
gli
all
uomini
and
credenti
is
e
the
non credenti,
seal
religiosi
of a new
e non
alliance
religiosi.
between believers and
Riconoscere la
non-believers.
centralità del sacro
Recognizing the
non può
centrality of the
significare
sacred
una
cannot
regressione
therefore
in
mean a
un'area dove
regression into an
la
area
ragione è
where
costretta al
reason
silenzio,
is
perché il
forced
sacro,
into
avendo tutte le
silence,
risposte,
because the
annulla tutte le
sacred,
domande.
having all
Il
the answers,
sacro non si trova a
cancels
fianco del
out
secolare,
all the
ma
questions.
nelle sue
The
profondità.
sacred is not found
Come
alongside
scriveva
the
Illich,
secular,
il
but in
sacro è
its
il terreno
depth.
creativo
The
e allo stesso
sacred
tempo
is
un
the
giudizio
creative
critico
ground and at the
del
same
secolare.
time a critical judgment of the secular. As religious, we are called to reinvent a language in which the human species can be reflected in its profound unity, in spite of all distances of time and space and in all diversity. Let me conclude wishing us all to become a voice that listens.
Questa è la qualità della voce che ascolta, che è attribuita nella tradizione buddista a Kannon, che è la manifestazione, tra l'altro in termini proprio anche iconografici femminile, della compassione, che insieme alla saggezza potranno accompagnare il cammino che ci è stato così indicato dal Santo Padre. Grazie.
Journey showed us by the Holy Father. Thank you, Reverend Viviani, for your intervention. Just a technical note, we have a lot of questions about the translation channels. You can mute the original sound, and you can find these options in the at the bottom part of your screen. Let me give the floor now to Swamini Hasmandagiri, Vice President of the Italian Hindu Union, who will speak to us about the Fratelli Tutti from the Hindu perspective. You have the floor. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this invitation. I'm overwhelmed seeing all of you here. Let me greet Cardinal Ayuso, Your Eminence Ravasi, and a special thank to the organizers, Maria Lia Zervino in particular, for this very beautiful and moving gathering. The gathering itself mirrors the diversity of the different voices. When Abu Dhabi Declaration, this second meeting shows a path that was strengthened on the themes and commitment that the encyclical Fratelli Tutti indicates. And it indicates this with the usual language to which the Holy Father has made us accustomed, a path of those who pursue the common good despite selfishness, ideologies, cultural colonization, and an impoverishment of values that leads to a disastrous inner aridity. The Holy Father's voice is always clear, strong, powerful, plural, and above all, it becomes an echo for those who weaker are not heard. To these pivotal and indispensable concepts, women will bring their contribution with the fresh thrust of their energies. Just like it was with Mahatma Gandhi, women went out from their houses, even if hated and offended, and they followed Mahatma Gandhi in the Salt March, supporting strongly the ideals of fighting with non-violence. The women of Mahatma Gandhi find an echo in Fratelli Tutti in verse 286, when it affirms having been inspired by non-Catholic brothers. Now, Mahatma Gandhi said, civilization in the true sense of the term lies not in multiplying, but in reducing intentionally and voluntarily the needs. The same echo we find in the Ashopanishad, when it says this desire is not long for whatever. So Mahatma Gandhi still says, modern civilization taught us to take night for the day, the noise for a golden silence. The Western civilization is bound to self-destruction because it's based on a greediness, selfishness, waste, exploitation. The Western world feeds and preserves its lifestyle through the culture of violence. And so in this culture, the figure of the woman is weakened. To overcome oppression. What is needed is to reject the qualities of the female qualities. Well, in verse 117, the encyclical says we need to communicate, to rediscover each one's richness and to value differences, to grow in respecting all. What is necessary is a trustful and patient dialogue so that people, families, and communities may transmit the values of culture and welcome the good that comes from other people's experience. Well, this verse, also quoted by Shahrazad, as well as other verses that invite us to welcome differences, well, that declinates the quality, the female qualities as a nucleus of education and formation of the family, the ability to accomplish, to take care, patience, which are the fundamental virtues that allows for the birth and the growth and transmit the founding values that permit any action of men and women. In the eternal dynamism of the world, the idea of stability is dear to the nature of women, whose instinctive forces, following the law of life, are to give plenitude and wholeness. The harmonious growth, education, and the moral founding of each individual stems from that family nucleus in which the woman is the vibrant nucleus. A chorus of women, therefore, gathered to symbolically carry in their wombs the motherhood of an ideal of absolute brotherhood, sisterhood, social justice, and equanimity, thus being able, truly able, to take care of the world, to make it an abode of peace as fully expressed in all our sacred scriptures, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is but one great family. In verse 17 of the encyclical, we read, take care of the world around us, and that supports us means to take care of ourselves. But we need to build us that inhabits our common home. And in Vasudhaiva, we read that we support each other in a balance between taking and giving. Each living being in this relationship is taking care of and takes care of others. To fulfill our true nature, to see everything in God and God in everything, overcomes the dichotomy I and you. We are the home and those who inhabit it. To protect our home is to protect ourselves. The home includes everything. Life is love, is awareness. And let me conclude with a verse of the Vedas which says, unite your wishes and your hearts, and may your spirits be one in Dharma. May you live long in unity and concord. Thank you. Thank you for these beautiful words and your contribution. For the Jewish perspective, we now give the floor to Dr. Nadine Yarki, President of the Interfaith and Intercultural Committee of the International Council of Jewish Women. You have the floor, Professor Yarki. Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying how honored I feel to be part of this assembly. As a Jewish woman, I was expecting to read just a text, but I found something very inspirational. So maybe the only doubt I have is about the title, which should have been Fratelli e sorelle tutti, as well as the term human right is not the same for everyone. The stranger, the foreign one, is the person that we find close to us. Where is our sense of citizenship when there is so much indifference? Why do we exclude the other? Because they belong to a minority or because they're old? So there must be attention and integration of migrants, even receiving a citizenship, because the encounter among different cultures enriches both parties to be able to accept that the other be themselves. That is at the basis of an harmonious society. And there is no superior or inferior culture. Each one plays their own role in a project of global peace, an individual, an institution, or a government. After a catastrophe, a disaster, we must be able to forgive without a spirit of vengeance, but to put in place a program for reconciliation. The death sentence is absolutely against human dignity. As a Jewish woman, I was particularly in agreement with those passages which speak of the family. You know, we are accustomed to the ideal family, man and women married with children, but there are different types of families, you know, homosexual couples with their wish for being parents. And I think what is also lacking is a statement that condemns violence vis-a-vis children and women. And in our Western society, where everyone works outside the home, when houses are smaller and smaller, the daily care of the elderly or family members that need more attention to nursing homes or homes for disabled people in our ultra-Orthodox culture is a consolidated tradition to take care of the elderly as much as we can. And this causes a clash sometimes. But this may not only be granted when a person comes to ask for forgiveness. The offended person, you know, the roles have changed today. As far as migrants are concerned, there is another approach based on the Tzimtzum approach. At creation, the Eternal One filled the whole world. When he created man and women, he shared the world with them. But then we had so many unfortunate events, the concentration camps, but mercy is synonym for justice and moral righteousness, and it is inscribed in the principle of tzedakah. In the Tzedakah, we also find the Esed principle, which covers the principle of a love of God to the neighbor and the obligations that we have. There are 8 levels of Tzedakah, among which to give a job to those who need it or help them without knowing where the help comes from. And so, all the generous donors that the Jewish world know that allows us to open our doors to migrants, like in the 16th century, Donna Garcia Mendez Nazi did. I can only rejoice in living now and not in the centuries of iterative oppression of the church. And nevertheless, the Jews are now being blamed for the pandemic and the caricatures of Jews defiling wells, as in the Middle Ages during the plague epidemic, have been reprinted. Attacks against the synagogues or Jewish people have become commonplace. Religious fanaticism has raised its head again. The world's climate is a big problem. Everyone is talking about it and nothing is being done about it. As a Jew, it is our duty to preserve the world as the Eternal One has given it to us according to the modern definition of the Tikkun Olam. So every year I plant a bush on my terrace to make it greener. As a Jewish woman, mother and grandmother, I hope that I can leave my family with a harmonious world, with a balanced climate, thanks to the efforts of all the women of the world, whatever their religion is. Now, I would like to explain some of the complicated words that I used in my speech. For example, Tikkun Olam has different interpretations by different commentators over the years. It ranges from religious acts such as praying towards social justice, and currently some emphasize the role of human responsibility and action on the world. So our actions must maintain or make the world a better place as it was at the moment of creation. And then the word Tzedakah, which is part of the 613 commandments, social justice as well as philanthropy, are tools by which we perform a piece of the Tikkun Olam. And then the word Esed, which means love towards the Eternal One among people through medical care, burial services, lending money, clothes, etc., all on a voluntary basis. A small remark: in Hebrew, the vowels are not written and can be changed from chesed, so we come to hasid, which means the one who is love. And then the word Tzimtzum, at creation, the Eternal One filled the whole world. When he created man and woman, he shared the world with them, and he reduced his space. Today, it seems that his bubble has become smaller, or in other words, taking up less space in order to share it with us. All these notions are linked to each other, and together they form a model of life that is found in the Kabbalah. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your contribution and for being with us today. Now, for the ecumenical perspective, let me give the floor to Professor Isabella Fili, Deputy Secretary General of the Ecumenical Council of the Churches. Professor
Fili, much.
You have the floor.
Right. Dear sisters and brothers, I bring you greetings from the Acting General Secretary of the World Council of Churches, Reverend Professor Yon Sauka. Thank you for inviting the World Council of Churches to be part of this conversation again. Pope Francis' latest encyclical Fratelli, tutti has sparkled serious reflections on navigating the important challenges that we confront today and foster the common flourishing of all as brothers and sisters. Reading the document from the perspective of women involves thinking about all that impedes and distorts our common kinship and reflective on how we can move together towards a new reality where we live as brothers and sisters and as children of the one Creator in fraternity and social friendship. I have 2 points. The first one is bridging the linguistic gap. I laud Fratelli tutti for its intentional effort to address some of the linguistic constraints associated with the word fraternity as an entire point for conversation on equality and inclusion. This document seeks to qualify the patriarchal language of fraternity by reiterating and thus underscoring at various points the universal scope of fraternity, which binds all men and women in familial love as brothers and sisters. The addition of the term social friendship to fraternity included in the very title of the document further underscores an effort to broaden the scope of the meaning as a mark of intentional respect for women's voiced concerns about the exclusively masculine implications of fraternity. From a Christian theological standpoint, I find the use of the word friendship significant, especially in an interreligious context. Peter Fan, an Asian American theologian, affirms the importance of Christians cultivating not just love as in agape, but also friendship as in philia with non-Christians. Fan states, I quote, "Love is a command of Jesus, obligatory for all Christians, unconditional and must be given to all, one's enemies included. By contrast, friendship is optional and preferential. This element of choice and exercising of moral agency in making friends out of strangers is essential to interfaith engagement and hospitality. Interreligious friendship is also the preferred mode of interreligious engagement of women who usually struggle to find a place on institutionalized dialogue tables. Dialogue emerging from such friendships, usually called the dialogue of life, helps us to understand religion in an embedded sense, blurring the lines between the sacred and secular in the course of daily experience. The second point is bridging the gap between theological vision and political will. One of the important thrusts of this document is to inspire a new vision of fraternity and social friendship that will not remain at the level of words. Speaking specifically of women's rights and equality, the document acknowledges the organization of societies worldwide is still far from reflecting clearly that women possess the same dignity and identical rights as men. The document says, we say one thing with words, but our decisions and reality tell another story, end of quote. This gap between our words and decisions must become another story. This gap between our words and decisions must become a priority of religious institutions. According to Pope Francis, I quote, "There are so many women who, in their daily commitments, with dedication and conscience, with courage that is at times heroic, have developed and put their genius to use. Their precious traits in the most varied, specific, and qualified skills combined with the real experience of being mothers and teachers," end of quote. Taking these words into consideration is part of this exercise. The current COVID-19 context has exacerbated gender inequalities globally. Countering them requires that religious communities take seriously what was said by the UN General Secretary, Dr. Antonio Guterres, that responding to the pandemic is not just about rectifying long-standing inequalities, but also about building resilience, while putting women's leadership and contributions at the heart of resilience and recovery. By refocusing the dialogue on actions of women heavily involved in transformation and change at the grassroots level, congruence between our talk and action becomes possible. Affirming the agency and contribution of women to peace building, justice, and flourishing of the entire creation ensures that things often hidden or overlooked in the interreligious dialogue tables again gains visibility and priority in a world that often is perceived as exclusively male domain. In many ways, the document offers the world a fresh opportunity for turning into reality our hopes of a world of justice and equality. We begin by finding the spiritual will to be the change we want to see. In so doing, we become what Christians call a community of equals, engaging women as critical partners in justice and providing women with the affirmation and recognition that is long overdue to them as they carry out their many contributions to our common good and mutual flourishing. Thank you.
Grazie a lei, professoressa Firi, per il...
Thank you, Professor Firi, for your reflection, your contribution. Let me now give the floor to Maria Lea Servino, President General of WUCWO and member of the Women's Council of the Pontifical Council for Culture and consultant to the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. Maria Lea, you have the floor. Thank you, Lavinia. First and foremost, let me thank all the people connected to this webinar, participating in this very special celebration of International Women's Day. And of course, Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi and Cardinal Miguel Angel Ayuso, who have honored us with their presence and their words. Dr. Bokova, spokesperson of the High Committee of the Human Fraternity, and the distinguished ambassadors who have wished to sponsor this event. I am especially pleased to share the panel with these 5 leaders of faith communities. With almost all of them, more than 2 years ago, we started this path of dialogue and social friendship that we will continue to build together. Thank you for your wishes, your commitment, and your constancy. Now, more than ever, in the situation caused by the coronavirus, we women feel co-responsible, together with men, for thinking and acting on Fratelli Tutti in order to raise awareness and educate towards the application of the treasure that the encyclical means for humanity. In this way, we will move from the uncertainty in which we live to the certainty of the objective to be achieved. Fraternity, sorority, and social friendship, from indifference to commitment, from consumer individualism to generous solidarity, from isolation to social fabric, and from declarations to actions. With Fratelli Tutti, we can open a new chapter in the history of humanity that demands and promotes a lifestyle different from the one many of us are used to, the core of which is the culture of encounter. Let's for a moment imagine such a world. Let us imagine that by means of a drone navigating in our atmosphere, we see an area of the planet. The image will be that of a number of networks of encounters in which each person is recognized with his or her own face and is responsibly linked to others in order to cooperate for peace and justice. A society where no one is isolated or considered useless or dispensable, where differences coexist and complement each other, where we recognize that we can always learn something from each other, is fundamental for everyone, but particularly for us women. Why? Well, because our equal dignity with respect to men is so often proclaimed but denied in the facts of exclusion, discrimination, and violence. As the encyclical denounces, women's rights are not equally respected. The time has come to shape together, men and women, a humanity based on bonds of friendship and fraternity. Why do we women feel particularly co-responsible for the challenge that Fratelli Tutti poses to us? Well, because we women want to know how to take care of a sick society. For centuries, we have been doing so with the family, caring for children, fathers, mothers, and the most fragile members of the family. I would say that we are quite expert in the culture of care, not only for those most in need, but also for our homes. The home, the house, is both modeled and it is both shaped and shapes the woman. In fact, the first roof that each of us has had on this earth, without a doubt, has been the body of a woman. That was our first home. How can we not now take care of our common home, our planet, to become a we that inhabits the common home, as Pope Francis says? And what can we women count on to contribute to a world of brothers and sisters? With our feminine identity, which on the one hand facilitates the revolution of tenderness and closeness, to incorporate the discarded ones into our own community of belonging. And on the other hand, our affectivity sharpens our intelligence. It sharpens our intelligence to think and find new solutions. Love is always creative, powerful in reflection and intuition. Women's protagonism is not only vital for the rethinking of close relationships, but also for macro relationships such as social, economic, and political relationships. I would like to underline the particular feminine suitability for generating relational goods that are essential for social friendship. Relational goods are therefore intangible relationships in which it is a matter of giving so that the other can also give. They are characterized by the fact that they are replicable. That is, they generate a reaction in accordance, although not identical, to what has been received, even at distant moments in time and in other subjects. They are goods that are not consumed when they are used, but in fact, they are increased. They are relationships that empower those they relate to in their integrity as human beings, and women by nature are generators of life. And of these relationships marked by social values such as trust, fidelity, and cooperation. We are made to foster community and communion, to be artisans of healing and encounter processes that contribute to the new phase of humanity. Now, what steps can we take to achieve this new phase of humanity? Let us examine our capacity for dialogue. Do we reach out to those we consider different? Do we look at them? Do we listen? Do we try to understand them? Do we look for points of contact? Because otherwise we cannot honestly conjugate the verb dialogue. And dialogue is the initial springboard of these processes. Let us start from the grassroots, from the local dimension to the global one, from each of our faith communities, and if we do not have faith, from every social sphere in which we find ourselves. As a woman of Christian faith, I believe in the words of Jesus: whoever does not love his brother whom he sees cannot love God whom he does not see. And therefore, I commit myself before you, together with my community, the World Union of Catholic Women's Organizations, to intensify at the local level concrete projects that lead our families to educate in the transmission of love and fraternity, of living together and sharing, of attention and care for the other. These good practices will support our proposals at the level of the international agencies in which we usually work. To carry out this commitment, I count on God's help, on your prayers, and our networking. Thank you all in advance, and thanks to Pope Francis for Fratelli Tutti. Thank you, Maria Lia, for your words. Now, let's move to the second part of this webinar. To all the ambassadors who are connected and who supported this conference. Let me give the floor to the ambassador of Argentina to the Holy See, Ms. Maria Fernanda Silva. Please, you have the floor. Thank you. I hope you can all hear me. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. Let me greet Cardinal Ravasi, Cardinal Ayuso, and Maria Lia. Thank you for the opportunity you gave me of being here, and to all those who have spoken before me, who have enlightened us and our faith. Let me thank the interpreters that are making this meeting, this gathering possible, and give us the possibility to communicate and understand each other. And a greeting to my fellow colleagues, the ambassadors before the Holy See, for sponsoring this very important gathering. I only have 2 minutes, and so I will try to clarify the idea I would like to share with you as far as this very special day is concerned. And I let me join Maria Elia in thanking Pope Francis for writing Fratelli Tutti. Thanks to the Holy Father for giving us this gift, which is way more than an encyclical letter, is a way forward. In the 2 minutes that I have available, let me just say that I have read Fratelli Tutti, and the part that speaks of open societies, starting from number 97, Pope Francis speaks to us about those who are close to us in our cities, the people forming our families. And Maria Lia also said this, the importance of being open, universal love, which is not a geographical love, it's an existential love. And Pope Francis leads us to think about the abandoned one, the neglected one in our societies, in our cities, and abandoned women. But often we are, foreigners in our own land, even if we have all the documents that we need. Pope Francis says that racism is a virus and is not disappearing. In fact, it is fed, it is hidden. And in this very short contribution of mine, I would like to hold virtually all my sisters all around the world and who feel strangers and foreigners in their own land. Those who are fighting against racism, those who do not have the strength or the power to fight, all those who are looking for new ways to go ahead, those who identify with March the 8th, all those who do not even know what this day is, because maybe they are in a situation of conflict or under a dictatorship, to those young girls forced to get married when they are only children. So we really need to join forces and fight against all this. To my sisters from Latin America, this pandemic brought us back many years. The 72% of people are being attended to. So let me hold all of you virtually. All those who are doing something in their lives to improve the life of others, and to those who think this day shouldn't even exist because they do not feel part of it. Well, to all of these women, my greeting and my love and my commitment to an open society. Let's unite in order to be able to reflect together and help all those people who become lost on the way, and be able to accompany all the people who are trying to go on this pathway. So once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Will not steal more of your time. I hope there will be more occasions to gather together let's try and do this. Let's try and create a network of thought, as Pope Francis tells us in number 97 of Fratelli Tutti, a love that is not geographical, but universal. Thank you. Thank you very much for your beautiful words. Let me now give the floor to the Austrian ambassador to the Holy See, Ms. Franziska Onsowitz-Friesnig. I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrongly. You have the floor.
Buongiorno a tutti e grazie.
Good morning, everyone.
Grazie a WUCWO e soprattutto a suo presidente Maria Lia.
Thank WUCWO and especially Maria Lia for organizing this webinar.
Sorry, I have a problem with. Sorry. I'm very happy that as an embassy we have been invited to participate and to support this seminar, especially what we have heard now, these very encouraging words from all the presentations and also from the cardinals, from the eminency. I think this is very encouraging and a path to follow. When I was reading Fratelli Tutti, I always had in mind the beautiful words of Pope Francis when speaking of sitting all together in the same boat. So sitting in the same boat for me means underlining the need for inclusion, the need for being together, finding solutions together. This is valuable for the religious dialogue, as was outlined before, especially also by Cardinal Ayuso. This is valid for the protection of our common house, for the protection of environment. And I would especially underline the important role of women in dialogue, dialogue for peace, dialogue for conflict resolution. These are areas where the role of women must be enhanced and even more highlighted. This was something that was recently also underlined by the Holy See, and we could not agree more with this path to follow. So when seeing this common, this boat where we are all together, sisters, brothers, united. So I think with this beautiful picture in mind that we are all together, that we can find solutions only together, I would like to wish all of you a very happy International Women's Day. And let us always keep in mind that we are brothers and sisters, and that the Fratelli Tutti, but also the Laudato Si and Lumen Fidei, and also the other encyclicals, that the reading together of these documents can bring common opinions, common areas, can bring that to us. And so I think this is something to go on, and not only for the International Women's Day, but to go on and follow this path of fraternity. Thank you so much for the organization. All the best.
Grazie a lei, ambasciatrice, davvero.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your contribution. Let me now straight away give the floor to the British Ambassador to the Holy See, His Excellency Mrs. Sally Axworthy. Ambassador, you have the floor.
And thank you to WUCWO and the Consulta Femminile for organizing this meeting. It's been great to hear the voices of all the sisters talking about Fratelli Tutti. I just wanted to say a couple of things from my reading of Fratelli Tutti. The first one is that it's clearly a document that brings together all the problems we face in a comprehensive way and encourages us to dream as a single human family about the good of all. And countries like mine already have many of the things Pope Francis mentions as part of our agenda, such as promoting democracy and media freedom, or fighting poverty, working to end human trafficking. These are all high on our agenda. But my favorite part of Fratelli Tutti was the chapter on religions at the service of fraternity in our world. And I think Pope Francis is doing something interesting and new in his reaching out to representatives of other religions, as we'll see him do this week in Iraq. I think Pope Francis has seen that the religions have much more in common than that which divides them, and in particular their concern for human dignity and also for the stewardship of the earth, which are essential, which are central, I think, to many religions. And I think in our modern world we need that religious voice, because we have a tendency to think short term, to think about the crises that are facing us now. And religious leaders think long term. I mean, the Vatican has a continuous 2,000-year history, which is a sort of perspective that governments can only dream of. So we need to listen to the religious voices and the religions talking together, as they have been this morning in this seminar. And we particularly want to hear that on climate change, because we have a very important year this year in addressing climate change, and the UK with Italy will be the hosts of COP26 towards the end of the year. So we're hoping that the religious voices will make a big contribution to thinking about what we must do to address that. So just to conclude, Fratelli Tutti helps us think about our values, reset our values for the future, and it's essential reading, and I'm grateful to you for letting us reflect on it this morning.
Grazie molte, ambasciatrice, per il suo supporto, il suo contributo.
Thank you for your support and your contribution. Let me now give the floor to the Ambassador of France to the Holy See, Her Excellence Elisabeth Beton-Delegué. Thank you. Thank you very much. And a special greeting to the eminences who open this webinar. What I'd like to say is that I took Fratelli Tutti as an encyclical that gives us much food for thought and to retrieve hope through the exercise of an active fraternity that calls each and every one of us at all levels, from the governments, the international community, to take action. I think that it is this interrelation that we must consider. This is a calling to responsibility, because it is true that we are all on the same boat. And each time we can blame others, but this is not how it should work. As a representative of France and an active member in the European Union, I would like to consider this encyclical as an invitation to 27 states that don't even speak the same language and do not consider other dimensions. Well, despite all the difficulties and weaknesses that Europe might have, we are all called to strengthen our internal solidarity, because no state, no country alone can take care of the world population. And this we find in Fratelli Tutti, which is an encouragement, an invitation to us all to work on this. Now we are talking about vaccinations, and we need to be in solidarity in order to reconfigure the whole world. I understand how important the ecological transition is, the reduction of our carbon footprint, and the recent commitments taken up concretely to provide the poorest country with the vaccines they need. And the WHO or the G7 in Ghana and the Ivory Coast. Vaccines have been distributed yesterday. And we must relaunch multilateralism, which is fundamental. The encyclical tells us that we live in an interdependence relationship. And another important point in this encyclical is that Pope Francis insists on how important it is to build peace, to walk hand in hand, artisans and architects. In my long professional trajectory that led me from Iraq to Ethiopia and South America and Madagascar, what I've learned from my experience is that even where the conditions are desperate, there are anonymous heroes that do a great deal to improve the life of their families, their villages, their community members, and women are the first actors in this peace building process. And so I'm glad that yesterday France passed a bill on solidarity development in the fight against global inequality. And this help should go to Africa. I think this endeavor, this commitment is very important because it helps our countrymen and women to understand that our money should be spent also abroad and not only for the sake of our own country. And women in the church are a source of enrichment. And the art of encounter, as Pope Francis calls it, is valuable to pay homage to those women I met in the different countries where I served. They work in a very practical way, in discretion and humility, with very few resources and means. They build this fraternity in silence. And to those women, those artisans of peace, I want to pay homage today. Also those who are working in Iraq today in such difficult conditions. A sister, I guess you saw that picture of that sister on her knees in front of the police. Well, that is an image representing Fratelli tutti. Thank you very much. Let me now give the floor to the ambassador of the Netherlands to the Holy See, Ms. Caroline Gabriela Wiegerts. You have the floor.
Grazie mille to
Thank you very much.
Organizers. Sorry, I have to mute the language interpretation. Sorry. Grazie mille to the organizers, speakers, and panelists for this very interesting conversation. I will try to stick to my 2 minutes. Talking about Fratelli tutti, Dr. Anna Rowland said, Pope Francis offers an extraordinary example of thought leadership and the world is hungry for it, unquote. How right she was. Intellectual leadership is one thing, but only when combined with a pastoral outlook can it become an inspiring force for the common good, as this document does. The encyclical is rich, being both broad, as in covering a plethora of themes, and deep. However, there are few references, quotes, footnotes, few references to women. Women activists, theologians, religious, and their contributions might have been given more attention, not for their personal glory, but so as to do justice to their role, task, and responsibilities, to honor their intellectual input and enhance the inclusion of and therefore relevance to women. I am very happy this meeting gave us an opportunity to jointly explore the riches of Fratelli tutti, also among and amongst sorelle. Thank you.
Grazie.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your participation and your reflection. Let me now give the floor to the Ambassador of Peru to the Holy See, Her Excellency, Ms. Maria Elvira Velázquez Rivas Plata. You have the floor. Thank you, Your Eminences, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Let me thank the organizers of this webinar. It is very good to sponsor this webinar on Fratelli Tutti, as it is a concrete way to practice the culture of encounter, an open and universal dialogue, in the words of the Holy Father, to bring about a change in the world. The Holy Father leads us with this encyclical letter on a pathway that questions us, showing us what our common project is in a reality marked by exclusion and inequalities, poverty. These are all realities that deny the right that human beings have to live in dignity. And the pandemic has worsened this situation. And as Maria Fernanda has already said, we've seen that that we went backwards in terms of equality. The human community is really broken, and Fratelli Tutti is a call to act together to restore relationships and our sense of humanity. That's why Pope Francis gives us a perspective of fraternity, and to direct our look towards three key concepts to act: the periphery, people, and dialogue. The periphery as a space starting from which we must bring about change, and people as a sense of belonging, and dialogue in terms of discernment as a way forward to reach social friendship. The contribution of women in all these fields has been decisive for all these processes of change, and also to face this crisis. And in the light of the concepts that we've mentioned, we see the transforming and resilient strength of women, and as women creates from the periphery and gives life. The woman is the people. She belongs to this mythical population. She brings ahead her dreams. A woman believes in dialogue because this is how she learned to live unity in diversity. In the image of Fratelli Tutti, we find the reality of the world, the situation that women live all over the world, as well as the elements to understand how rich the contribution of women is, and a new horizon to keep on building together a more human world. Let me thank all my fellow colleagues who spoke before me, and the presentations on the cardinals on the encyclical Fratelli Tutti. And in this celebration of the International Women's Day, you have enriched our minds and our way of thinking, the contribution of all religions in building peace and the common good in our world. So let's go ahead with hope. And I wish all of you a beautiful International Women's Day. Thank you. Thank you. Let me now give the floor to the ambassador of East Timor, Ms. Jovita Rodriguez Barreto de Ataide González.
His Excellency Cardinal Gianfranco Ravasi, President of the Pontifical Council for Culture. His Eminence Cardinal Miguel Angel Ayuso WUCWO, President of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. Dear colleagues, ambassadors, to my fellow women leaders, my respect to the WUCWO organizing team, ladies and gentlemen. First, I want to thank God for giving us this excellent moment. Second, I want to extend my gratitude to the World Union of Catholic Women's Organization, most especially to its President General, Mrs. Maria Lia Zervino, for involving East Timor for the first time in this ecumenical and interreligious event dedicated for women. I am honored and blessed to be here at this special day to represent the women of my country, East Timor, in this unique celebration of International Women's Day. I feel moved and inspired by the phrase Fratelli tutti, which is the title of the new encyclical of His Holiness Pope Francis. Inspiring word which means we are all brothers and sisters. An important document which encourages everyone to uphold and promote fraternity and equality, including between men and women. We know the important role of women in the world in general. From the basic unit of the society, which is the family, it is the mother who is a woman that has a key role in teaching, in guiding children to grow as better persons in the future. People who will become workers and leaders of our society, who will eventually build a nation. I would like to state and emphasize that women have the same dignity as men, but within the family and in society in general. However, there are still a lot of ongoing discrimination against women in our world today. Violation and disrespect women's rights are still rampant. Many women are still being mistreated and considered a subordinate or minor gender by men. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the social encyclical of Pope Francis opens our minds to accept the equality and co-responsibility of every person, either man or woman, in creating a better world for everyone. As what is stated, no one is useless and no one is expendable. Humanity must move forward and work together, removing the social, religious, political, and gender barriers and difference in order to create a peaceful and united world. We, women, has a vital role in this calling and plea of His Holiness. We must work together with the men to attain a better place, especially for our young generation. Finally, I want to thank the World Union of Catholic Women's Organization for having organized this women's activity on an ongoing basis. And I assure you that my country, East Timor, will continue to be committed in participating in your future events. Thank you very much. Grazie a tutti.
Grazie a lei, Eccellenza, per la sua partecipazione, per aver accettato.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for being with us and accompanying us for today's celebration. We are reaching the conclusion of this meeting. Unfortunately, we do not have time today to answer all the questions or open a debate. However, if anyone has any specific questions for one of the speakers, please send them to WUCWO with your details, and we will try and answer. On behalf of the Women's Council and WUCWO, let me thank His Excellencies Cardinal Ravasi and Cardinal Ayuso. I thank our speakers for their valuable reflections, Dr. Bokova for her video message, and all the ambassadors to the Holy See who believed in this meeting and sponsored it, and also all of you who connected from the 5 continents. It's almost 300 of you, and also on YouTube. I would also like to thank Engineer Stefano Toppi for the technical part, the WUCWO staff for all their work, and our tireless interpreters who have helped us so much today. Now, for those who are interested, the recording of this webinar will be uploaded on YouTube as well as on Fratelli tutti. So for those who wish to stay connected for a few more minutes, we will broadcast a video of interreligious music, which will be introduced by Professor Shahrazad, Vice President of the Women's Council. Thank you all, and Professor Shahrazad, you have the last word. Very well, thank you. I think it's been a great feast. All the messages you wrote in the chat box. We've celebrated women with an embrace that is like a rainbow. Women from many cultures, many religions, languages, colors, and very different, but in harmony and unity. Let's love one another in justice and peace, and let's keep convinced that diversity is enriching. Let's fight against any type of injustice, and let's open our hearts to create harmony in diversity on one earth, one boat, one human family. Let's conclude this beautiful gathering that, thanks God, has given us the chance to celebrate women with a universal embrace and with a music video that expresses our spirit, and a liturgical hymn with 3 voices from the Hebrew, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim world before Pope Francis and the Grand Imam. We want to sing together our liturgies, our poems, our dreams in harmony with our diversities. Thank you all once again, and let's listen to this beautiful song.
محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله شبيتخيم غنيمو أدوني خات إيروي
Grazie a tutti, buona giornata a tutti e grazie per averci
Thank
seguito.
you all. Have a beautiful day and thanks for participating. And happy International Women's Day. Thank you. Thank you all.
Grazie, arrivederci.
Arrivederci, grazie, grazie mille a voi.
Thank you all very much.
Specialmente a te.
Especially Sherazad from Tehran. Thank you.
Seguiamo adesso il viaggio del Papa.
Sì. Buona festa, la donna.
Grazie a tutti.
Grazie.
Tutti.
Have a nice peace.
Je voudrais remercier tout le monde si c'est possible.
Oui, bien sûr.
Merci, enchanté d'avoir avec nous toute votre présence, votre parole.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.